Hello and welcome. That's the bell that signifies the start of Live Stream Insiders, and together with this pin like that, it means that we are starting another review of the last 7 days in live streaming news over the next 30 minutes. Hello and welcome to episode 78. My name is Peter Stewart, and on the 9th of April 2017, let me introduce you to my my co-host, Krishna Day. Hi Krishna, how are you?
Great to be here, and thank you everybody for joining us here for Livestream Insiders. If you haven't joined us before, if you're new to the show, our objective is to cover the latest live video news, tools, case studies that you can use in your organization to actually help you be more successful in integrating live video into your communications. That's what we do here on Livestream Insiders. We've been going for coming up to 2 years now, every single week. But we're actually probably going to have a week off next week because we know lots of people will be celebrating it being a public holiday. It's Easter. So some of you might be actually celebrating that next week. Although, if there is some amazing news that we feel like we need to jump on for, we will certainly do so. In fact, Peter, one of the things we could do, I don't know if you tested this out, one thing that we talked about last week was the fact that you can actually now have two people on iPhone on your mobile phone for Facebook Live on mobile. And I was so happy, yay, that I was able to get access to that this week. It's only available on iOS at the moment. So we know we could do that from wherever we might be, wherever you're doing your Easter egg hunt next week, Peter. Oh, I've lost Peter. I'm sure he'll come back in just a moment. Anyway, so just in terms of something else that we want to tell you about here for Livestream Insiders is that we have been taking the show and we're putting it on YouTube, but we also have it on SoundCloud. So for some of you, you might like to download the audio. Although we do have some screenshots through the program, it's actually not a tutorial that you need to be watching online for all of it. So what you can do, if you prefer, you actually can go over to see the content, download the content from SoundCloud. Now, this is an experiment for us at the moment. We'd love your feedback. Is this something that you would find helpful? If so, then we'll actually consider what we might do in terms of, are we on SoundCloud? Are we going to use another platform for it? But we just wanted to give you a little experiment to see if this is a different way that those of you who are not able to watch us live could access the content. So go over to my account over at soundcloud.com/Krishna Day. You'll see the last few episodes that are there, and let us know, is this something that you would value? Anyway, with that, Peter, we should get on with some more news in terms of what's going on with lots of live video news this week. We're going to be talking about some updates to YouTube people I think might be interested in. We'll be talking about that new app. I'm not sure if you've experimented with it yet in terms of clips, because I know that lots of people are using this, including I'm seeing some news organizations and mobile journalists, of which you are one of them. But anyway, I'm going to pass it back to you, Peter, for the moment. Take it away from here with some live video news.
Okay, just a little bit of housekeeping. I've got a bit of a bad signal because you keep freezing and then suddenly catching up with yourself, if you know what I mean. So I've turned off my other devices, so I can't actually follow any Facebook conversations. So, Christian, I'm afraid I shall have to leave that with you, just to enable a better stream on the main platform, on the main service, which of course is coming to you again via Blue Jeans and our friends at bluejeans.com, who I was speaking about this particular organisation earlier on in the week, in fact. So maybe we'll talk about some fascinating work that a local group, or a group local to me, is doing called Digital Surrey, where I was live streaming some of their presentations during the course of the week. But that is still to come. Now, one of the big stories during the course of the week, and it has to be said, it has been a little bit quiet in live streaming news this week, but boy oh boy, I'm not surprised, because they used up a whole load of fantastic announcements, didn't they, 7 to 10 days ago, when we were besieged with all sorts of updates. But one of the most interesting articles which came out this week, I thought, was that 1 in 5 Facebook videos is live. And there's a really interesting article that I know Krishna was reading, and I was spent a bit of time on it as well, from tech.com, which was going through the details of what it was. Actually, quite a short article, so not really an in-depth article, but certainly an in-shallow article, if you like. Facebook saying 1/5 of the videos shared on its network are now live videos, and it's seen live broadcasting daily watch time grow by 4 times in the past year. Now, this is according to its head of video, someone who we've spoken about before, Fiji Simo. And what they want to do is, as the headline of this article suggests, 1 in 5 Facebook videos is live as it seizes the verb. They want to be known as the platform you turn to when you say live. When you say live video, when you say live streaming, automatically you want to think, or they want you to think, of Facebook Live, as opposed to some of those other many numerous apps which you can turn to instead. And they say that, well, you're kind of looking back over the last so that Facebook Live has been about. There's been some peaks and some troughs, haven't there? Some of those peak times was in payments made to celebrities and organisations as well. They had a huge advertising campaign in London, and I remember name dropping when I was in New York last October, the big banners that they had in Times Square as well, their physical advertising campaigns in Times Square to try and encourage more and more people to take up live streaming. TV ads as well. Haven't seen any of those for a long time, but between you and me, I usually zap through the TV adverts. And of course, here in the UK, we've got several channels with no adverts on at all. They're very worthwhile. And also, they've some of the troughs as well. And those have been with reports of on-screen violence and some of the stories that we've heard about the shootings, about the physical attacks, about the sexual attacks, about people hurting themselves on live stream. So they've had some really good publicity and bad publicity over the course of the last year, 18 months. And what they were really keen on doing, this article, as I say, in techcrunch.com, kind of digs down a little bit into the thinking behind Mark Zuckerberg and his crowd there. When they saw Meerkat have great success in the early part of 2015, and then Periscope having great success after that as well. And the article says, quote, Facebook saw the potential nightmare for them of the world periscoping weddings, parties, sporting events, breaking news, and they didn't want to miss out, especially because they have crushed, haven't they? They've got Twitter under their thumb, and they didn't want Twitter to have a resurgence with this live video business, particularly through Periscope. So they didn't want Twitter to have a resurgence of good fortunes, which is why Mark Zuckerberg apparently essentially put part of their facility in lockdown and determined that 100 people would be working on live streaming for Facebook until they got it right, until they sorted it, and until they launched it. Really interesting article that they want to be the turn-to platform for you going live from your mobile phone. So that was certainly well worth reading. And I know, Krishna, you took an interest in that as well. That article in techcrunch.com. As usual, of course, all of our links will be available soon after the show.
So let's turn down our attention now to a different live video platform, and that is, in fact, Twitter. So Twitter, we've talked about over the last number of year and a half, about the different ways that they've been actually looking at Twitter Live, different to Periscope. And I know that's something that Peter always actually has a little conversation about, and I'm sure he's got a point of view on this a little bit later. But this is not such good news for Twitter, and you may have picked this up. So this is something we'd actually talked about in the past in terms of their live video, in terms of the sports. So any of you who have been involved in digital communications and particularly live streaming will know that sports is a huge area in terms of interest, in terms of live video. And so they'd actually got a deal with the NFL. So let me just read from this article, which is in Recode. And just to let you know, if you're new to the show, all of the links that we're actually referring to, plus lots more besides, because we can also create lots of social business links and social media links as well. They're all going to be posted later for you in the notes here for the show, so you'll be able to go to them later. So this is in Recode, and it says, Twitter will not be streaming the National Football League, NFL, that's in the US, of course, Thursday night football games this fall. Who's going to be doing it? Another platform we've talked about over our time together, Peter, and that is Amazon. That was a bit of a surprise to me that actually Amazon got this particular deal. $50 million is actually what's at stake in terms of this deal. And that's for the league. And actually that was announced earlier this week. The article goes on to talk about the fact that this is bad news for Twitter, not because just of the NFL streams drove a lot of users, and they actually comment they didn't, generated a lot of money, they comment they didn't, because the NFL partnership was a cornerstone. It's actually one that many people talked about in terms of, isn't this exciting about live video and Twitter in terms of sports? And so their pitch had been, Twitter is about live. There's nothing more real time than live sports. Live sports. Partnering with the NFL boosted Twitter's reputation in a serious live streaming option for other rights holders. So interesting, the article goes on and talks about issues in terms of metrics, that in fact, this partnership didn't really drive a lot of more users. There's a lot of conversation about Twitter at the moment. In fact, lots of people seem to be joining other platforms. I'm not going to go into that here today. And I've have to admit that I haven't joined other platforms. I still love Twitter, and it served me very well in terms of some live events that I was at this week. But there was an update which was particularly interesting to me on the Recode article, which actually had this following statement. And this is saying that Twitter does indeed plan to continue its push into live streaming. And they said, since last year, we have collaborated on over 40 live stream partnerships, and we will continue to bring the best live content to our customers around the world. In Q1 2017, we aired more than 800 hours of live stream content from over 400 events across sports, news, politics, and entertainment. The NFL was a great partner to launch our strategy, and will continue to do so. So it must have been a loss to them. Really interesting that Amazon were the people who actually picked that particular deal up. Well, what's coming next? Maybe, Peter, you've got some thoughts on that, because I know that Twitter video and Twitter Periscope we've actually been talking about. We'll come to a little bit more of that probably because of something you picked up a little later in the show. Okay, so Peter seems to have frozen there just for a moment. I'm not sure what happened. Let me pick up the next part of the story. So, Peter, if you're there, do come in and talk about this.
Okay.
I seem to have lost you for a moment, but we're going to be talking about YouTube next. And so maybe you want to pick the story up. It looks like you're back there.
Absolutely. Absolutely, yes. A few connection problems here in the metropolis that is the city of London. So sorry about that. The futuristic city struggling with a little bit of Wi-Fi connection. But to YouTube then, and it's changing the rules about when users can start earning money through carrying adverts on their video channel. Now, this article was actually from the BBC website, bbc.co.uk, or if you prefer, bbc.co.uk. And obviously lots of other websites were carrying this information as well. But really, really interesting stuff, because obviously one of the big things about doing live streaming is, let's be totally honest, making some money out of it. Now, it could be hard cash, so it could be something through the likes of, you know, how Busker was doing it, where essentially you can get paid almost directly by somebody, whereas we were talking about those donations on Facebook Live, which are coming soon as well. Or it may be through customers who may come to you somewhere down the line, which is a whole different issue and talked about in the book. Psst, the deadline is tonight, incidentally. And essentially, you do have to try and earn a bit of money. Now, as a bit of a sidebar, I was looking at an article a bit earlier on, which was written by someone who's really, really big in Europe. To do with live streaming, and they were talking about how many followers watch their programs on Periscope, and how many views they've got, and how many programs they've done, and how many hearts they've been given. No mention of how it's helped their actual business. No mention of whether it's led to an increase in income or an increase in the interest from consumers or potential customers or clients. Really, really interesting. Don't let live streaming for you be a vanity project. At the end of the day, you've got to put food on the table and put clothes on the back of your children, as I'm sure that Krishna would agree. Anyway, back to YouTube, changing the rules about when users can start earning money through carrying adverts on their video channel. So new channels will have to get 10,000 views before they can be considered for the YouTube partner program. YouTube will then have a little nose around, have a little dig, and see what you're up to, and will evaluate whether or not user guidelines on YouTube before letting you carry adverts. And in that process, while it's having a bit of a sniff around and looking under the rocks and so on that you've got on your particular account, it'll be clamping down on fake channels and also content theft as well. Now, this is a really big problem, perhaps on YouTube more than any others. These fake channels and the content theft, you don't see, to be fair, an awful lot of content theft, I don't think, on Facebook or on Periscope or on Twitter, but it is huge, absolutely ginormous, isn't it, on something like YouTube. You can barely move before you can see some kind of ripped off TV channel and so on, or somebody else's content. Which actually brings me to something else. The number of people who I see nicking content off Twitter and reposting it as their own drives me really, really nuts. Anyway, I don't think that it's going to be too difficult, to be quite honest, to get a channel with more than 10,000 views, because you've got a global audience quite literally out there. If you're adhering to some of the basic tenets of good live streaming or good video content, then 10,000 views over a period of several months I don't think is going to be too difficult, so long as good content, you advertise it, and you make a connection with the audience that you're trying to reach. So that's views. We're not talking about subscriptions. So even if people aren't watching the entire video, they're just watching, 5 or 10 seconds, that counts as a view. Get 10,000 of those, and then you'll be able potentially to get onto the YouTube partner program, and will start to make essentially, or potentially I should say, a little bit of cash on the side, which of course you still have to, certainly in many parts of the world, fess up to the taxman about.
I guess I'm going to challenge you there, though, Peter, in terms of your comment around 10,000 views. And I firstly just want to say thank you to those of you who are joining us here. Particularly, I can see Jen and Sabrina, and both of them are very active in terms of live video. And perhaps you guys want to comment here as well about whether you think that Peter's assertion that 10,000 views is not a challenge. I think it is. I look at organizations' YouTube channels all the time. And perhaps it's different if you're in the news world, which is what you're in, Peter. But I see very few people getting views of their content, because you can actually see some of that actually there. And I look at that, be it agencies in terms of PR agencies, be it brands. So a lot of them are just reposting their ads. And of course, unless it's a really amazing advert, they're not getting interesting views. What I am noticing is something I'm going to come on and talk about now. And that's actually something else in terms of live video. 10,000 views, I have to say, I give you a challenge, Peter, for your book. Go set up a YouTube channel, see how quickly you can get to 10,000 views. It's actually, actually quite a challenge.
What I said was, good content, advertise it well, and back it up afterwards, and build relationships with people. I was watching some Facebook lives by a well-known British broadcasting company earlier on today for a very large event that was going on, and they had no cross-promotion from Twitter to Facebook, from Facebook to their website, from their website to Twitter. There was nothing at all. All of those three channels were being operated in silos completely. And I was thinking, this is madness. What a completely wasted, missed opportunity. So that's the kind of thing I'm saying. Good content, advertise it well, and have backup afterwards.
So I'm actually getting some support. Thank you, Sabrina. Thank you, Jen. In fact, Jen makes a comment, and I've seen this myself with some YouTubers that I follow, and they specialize in helping people get more subscribers to their channel. They're doing a lot of live video. In fact, I'm noticing at the moment about how to manage these changes that YouTube are making. Now, personally, I'm happy that they're actually making some changes to actually clean up the channels. And interestingly, I actually was over on somebody's channel recently, and somebody had made some comments and was in a conversation, and actually went and followed their account through, and basically that was a spam account because YouTube have taken it down. Anyway, more to another topic on YouTube, more specifically around live video. And I think this will be interesting. But again, I still think this is going to be a challenge for some of us. And Peter was talking about before in terms of advertising revenue. You can't become a partner there with YouTube until you've got 10,000 people who are actually, 10,000 views of your content. Well, one of the things that we talked about back in February was about being able to go live, doing live video from your mobile on YouTube. Yes, there are other apps that you can do it, but this is directly within the YouTube app. Now, this was first announced at VidCon back in 2016. It took them about 9 months to implement it. Everybody was really excited, but then you had to have 10,000 people subscribe to your channel. Now, what's happened is they've actually changed that. So again, in our articles, you'll actually find a couple of resources, a couple of articles about this change. So now you need to have just 1,000 subscribers. That is still a challenge to get. Again, it's about what are priorities. There's people I know who've got huge channels and have done really well, but that's because it's been a priority for them to be able to do that. And they've been really consistent with their content. So I think actually getting subscribers to your YouTube channel may be an objective for some of us in the year ahead. And one of the things I'm noticing is a lot of people who I know who were actually very active on YouTube are doing a lot more live video on YouTube these days, because of course that helps them with their views. It helps them in terms of how YouTube sees them as well. And I think they're actually growing their following. They're doing a lot more, ask me anything conversations. So I watched one yesterday. In fact, I was on YouTube posting some content myself because I've been creating some video content this week. And actually, when I was over there, up popped somebody I subscribed to, and it was their live video. And they were doing a lot of ask me anything, come and ask me your questions. And in their case, it was all about YouTube and actually how to manage all the changes with YouTube at the moment. So that might be something for us to consider, but it is about their priority. But it's good news. 1,000 subscribers is a lot more accessible. Just want to say hi, Melissa. Thank you for coming and joining us. I'm not sure if this is your first time here on watching us here on Livestream Insiders. I can see there that Carlos, thank you for joining us here, Carlos. I know you're very active as a live in terms of with live video as well. And so I know that you're doing a lot of things in the US. So I'm going to put Peter back on screen because he's waving to everybody, and I don't think you could see him doing that. And Sabrina's making some comments there about a couple of live streamers. In fact, both of them I know, Roberto and Eileen, are very active on YouTube. Yeah, there's a number of people who actually have got great channels who are actually helping people become more successful on YouTube, if that's important to you. But really good news, I think, but it is still a bit of a challenge to get to 1,000. I think some of us might be hanging out for them to drop the number down to 500. But with other third-party tools that we can use, doesn't mean that we can't go live on YouTube. We can definitely go live in terms of on desktop, and we can definitely go live in terms of with other third-party mobile apps. With that, Peter, what do you think of the new update from Apple? And in fact, I know Carlos, who's watching us here today, has been experimenting with this new app that has been released. iOS only, I'm afraid, for those of you on Android. Have you been playing with it? It's the Clips app is what we're talking about here.
So, Carlos, thank you so much, my friend, for how you've helped me. If I can just do a little bit of mention for me for the book, really, really appreciated, sir. And several of those are going in. And, you know, YouTube, very, very sniffy. They wouldn't let me use any YouTube images at all. No logos, nothing. They have no media pack, not interested at all. Facebook, Twitter, and Periscope were fine, by the way. And Carlos, top man, thank you so much. Yeah, so we're talking about the Clips app, which was launched several weeks ago actually, but it's beginning to get rolled out when you are able to update your iOS device, and it's really interesting. It's a kind of cross between iMovie and Snapchat. I'm not sure that I've got mine working completely well, because some of the articles I was reading, and maybe someone can help me with this, is that you should be able to have one of those stickers which automatically picks up where you are, and also the time and temperature. I've got the time one and the date one, but nothing that gives me a temperature or the location. The location just is stuck on San Francisco. Or am I reading that in the wrong way? And maybe I shouldn't have one that says London and 26 degrees today in London in April. Boy, oh boy, that was a bit of a treat for us. Apart from the fact I was working and stuck inside. But yeah, I think it's really, really interesting. And even though it's not live video per se, it's kind of semi-live video, because you can obviously take some video and then you can annotate, and it does voice recognition. So the text that you put on, the subtitles, the closed caption, if you like, can go up almost as you are recording the video, and you can change that text as well. A bit tricky to work out how to change the text once you've recorded it, but put that video in pause, then tap on the screen, and then you're able to change the text if it's got some of those words incorrect. If you've got a slightly strong accent, or you're speaking too fast, or you've got a bit of background noise and so on. I'm going to be using it over the next few days, giving it a bit of a test, because it's always nice to be a little bit ahead of the curve, and especially if it gives the impression I'm down with the kids. And as I say, I've tried my Snapchat, I couldn't get on with it, and this seems to be a kind of version of Snapchat, and potentially a bit more accessible for me. Certainly looked a bit more kind of easy, a bit easier to understand. So I'm going to be having a play around with that over the next few days, when tomorrow I hopefully will be doing some video filming, and maybe some live video filming, from one of Henry VIII's grandest palaces on the banks of the Thames. It is an Elizabethan, in fact, prior to Elizabethan, obviously, Henry VIII, old palace on the banks of the Thames called Hampton Court, and it is marvellous. Pity the weather tomorrow isn't going to be as good as it was today, but I'm going to be trying out there some video, some live video, and maybe some clips as well.
So we're getting a question there from Sabrina saying, is anybody else been using the Clips app? Remember, we're talking about the iOS app from Apple, available for free, only produces video in square format. And Sabrina's asking, is anybody else using it? So if you're using Clips, do put a comment in the comments area and let us know. Perhaps you've been posting it on Facebook or Twitter or somewhere else. And as we know, Facebook really likes square video. There's been some interesting results being published about that recently from a number of sources, but including Buffer having done some research. So in terms of square video, one of the things to be aware of, that you actually can also bring content. I don't know if you might want to try this, Peter, if you've got content that's already on your camera roll. So that's one of the things I was doing. So I actually had some video content on my camera roll, which happens to be for an event that both Peter and I are at in May, called MojoCon. And it's happening in Ireland. And so I actually wanted to showcase all of the speakers. So I actually had some square video In fact, in video, I made square. It wasn't square to start, I should say. It was portrait. I made it square, and then I brought it into clips. And one of the things you can do is put fun filters and so on over it. And so that's what I did. There's music in there that you can use, but I really like that. And don't worry if, as Peter was saying, if you get your pronunciation or how it picks up your words is incorrect, you can actually turn your voice off if you choose to do so, and actually you can just have the words that play. So it's not intuitive. We've put some resources in the show notes for you to be able to get some tips about how to use it. There's already people who've been creating video content around it too, but there's some useful tips, and particularly one article that we came across, which was 10 tips to get you started, because it isn't intuitive. Even if you know Snapchat, even if you know all the fun filters on Facebook, it's not intuitive. Now, I just want to come quickly to a question here. So Melissa's got a question. Melissa's a first-time viewer here for Livestream Insiders, and she says, I feel like the quality of Facebook Live video from iOS is better with a single individual, not so much after inviting a guest. Is that the case for all? I can certainly give you a perspective on that. Peter, is there anything you want to say first?
Sorry, I had a few problems hearing what you were saying. What was the question?
So there's a question there from Melissa asking about, she sees the quality with one individual is better often on Facebook Live than with when you invite a guest. Is that the case for all? So I don't know if you want to make any comment. I certainly can make have a few thoughts for you there, Melissa. Peter, do you want to say anything first, though?
If I'm understanding the question correctly, it sounds as though, well, you know what, as we've spoken about before, and I don't have the stats to hand, but there was an article, wasn't there, about a year, 18 months ago that we were discussing on the programme about the amount of data, the amount of work that your phone and the processor has to do to process one particular signal. So what it's doing, obviously, is sending your signal over to the platform, and then it's sending that over to anyone else who's watching, but also sending their comment down back to your phone at the same time. So it's all appearing seamless. Now, obviously, there is much more work it has to do if it's also processing video coming back at you the other way and appearing on your phone, as well as the sound as well. It's an awful lot of work that it's doing, an awful lot of data that it's chewing up as well. So I would suspect that that is going to have an effect on the actual screen resolution and the clarity of the picture, which is appearing on your phone, whether you are whether you are the broadcaster or the guest, or whether you are viewing.
Melissa, if you're interested about data, over on my site, Krishna.me, I did some research and I actually referenced the apps that you could do to actually duplicate it. What you don't mention there in your comments is actually how you're doing that live video. So are you trying the side-by-side, the new feature there from Facebook, or are you using tools like we're using here, such as Blue Jeans, there's BeLive, there's other tools as well. So we know, we've already said today that we've got a bit of a problem in terms of Peter's connection. Mine should hopefully be fine, but actually Peter's actually having some struggles there in terms of where he's based in London this evening. And so that means that when he's there as you know, he's effectively the guest, although we're co-hosts, he's there as a second person. So it's really going to be dependent on the people that you're bringing in. So the one thing you might do is always check the quality. If you're going to bring people onto your live stream and you're hosting it, actually do some tests. That's what we would always do. If we have guests that come onto the show, we always do a test with them beforehand to make sure they come in the best way possible. And one thing to consider, and I actually did this for a long time with some of the apps that I've used for live video, is sometimes I get a better quality stream on my phone. So something like Blue Jeans, people can come in on Android or iOS onto here. They don't have to be on desktop. So that's another consideration. How do you make it easy for the people that you're bringing in? So I hope that's going to help you. Aaron, thanks so much for joining us. Hope you're well. Guess what I actually am using here on the side? Yes, my Archon mount here, and great to have you with us. And let's see if there's anything else. Yeah, so what's happening with us? So as I said already, Melissa, we've actually got a bit of a problem with the connectivity over at Peter's end today. Sabrina's also just commenting. I just want to pick this up before our last piece on the show here. Was saying that she'd been reading some reviews about clips, and the majority said they didn't notice anything that can't be done with an iPhone. I think it is substantially different in terms of the app, particularly in terms of where I'm seeing journalists, and I think you saw this as well, Peter, somebody from the BBC, actually, it isn't, of course, using the official BBC lower thirds, but actually what they're doing is a lot of news organisations like RTE in Ireland and the BBC are increasingly creating content on mobile for their social media channels, unique content for it. And one of the things that they're able to do is, of course, when they're narrating something, that actually that's giving them all of the kind of the comments there, the captions that would otherwise take. Peter, how long does it take for you to edit a video? Let's take an example. When we were talking about probably every 3 seconds you've got a different cut through when you're doing it for your organization. How long will it take you to put captions in?
It does take a long time, absolutely, on the way we're doing it. Although there is a slightly new kind of process for us to be working through for the British broadcasting company for which I work, that I'm not allowed to tell you what it's called, but yeah, put 2 and 2 together. However, oh, by the way, I did a bit of video during the course of the week that made it to the main BBC website, so I'm really pleased about that. So that's a little bit of claim to fame. And also, I should say, Aaron, thank you. Really appreciate your help. You know what for, and it's being submitted this very evening. But
if anybody doesn't know that Peter is actually writing a book, he already wrote the first book ever on the topic of Periscope. He's writing a book. He's authored other official books with proper official publishers. Yeah, and this one's on live video. It's going to be out later on this year, and he's been connecting with lots of people for actually stories for the book. Okay, we've got one piece of content we've got to get to. Let me just say to you, Melissa, you can message me on Facebook if you wish to do so. Of course, you could message Peter as well. But if you've got specific questions, in fact, if you go to krishna.me/meeting, that's krishna.me/meeting, you can schedule a conversation with me there. I'm not around very much this week because I'm actually at the conference, but if you want to talk about what you're trying to do, and we can talk about what might be the best platform. But I know there's lots of other people here in the chat who I'm sure will have good advice for you. So one thing that I know we've gone over, Peter's going to slap my wrist. One last piece for you. Question. Is there a change that's happening, as we've talked about before, on Periscope, stroke Twitter? Matt Navarro, who works for the Next Web, he's a journalist, and I know Peter follows him, and I do now and again, actually had posted an image that was similar to the one here you see on the left-hand side. He had gone onto his Twitter profile on the web, and what he noticed was that instead of saying view Periscope, it now says view broadcasts. And actually, you don't see that because I looked on iOS. Now, maybe it is on Android because I haven't checked on Android. But on iPhone, when I actually went and had a look, because I asked him, I said, where did you get that screenshot from? Because I don't see that. On iOS, it still says Periscope. It doesn't actually, in fact, it hasn't got that view broadcast there. But the other thing I noticed, because I was curating content this week and talking about an event I was at called the Sage Summit. So I went and did a screenshot there for you in terms of on the right-hand side, what you see is the search bar. So if you go to Twitter on the web and you put in a hashtag in there, it doesn't say Periscope anymore. It says broadcasts. So well spotted to Matt Navarra in terms of what he saw there. Whether or not we're going to be talking about broadcasts rather than live. I'm interested they didn't say live, but they've actually said, because they want to be known for live video, as you've talked about earlier on, Peter, but they're actually using the word broadcast rather than Periscope. So that's quite an interesting development. So the other thing we should also just talk about is Peter's event that he's speaking at in Cardiff. I saw Peter, it's sold out. It's full, isn't it? He's doing this event for the journalists on community journalism, and he's doing this session all about live video, and it's completely booked up. But I think there's a wait list. So you might want to tell people how to find that. I'm sure they can do that from your Twitter stream, which is tweet us, Stuart. The one that I think there's still a few tickets for, though, is actually for an event that's going on this week in Ireland. It's the Social Media Summit. Really delighted that Mari Smith, for the first time ever, is going to be in Ireland. I think she flies there tomorrow. I've known Mari since about 2005, so it'd be lovely to meet her in person. And I'm actually speaking on the topic of live video. And I've got a code. This is not an affiliate link. You can just go and use that code that you see there if you happen to be interested in coming to the conference. It's on Tuesday and Wednesday. That's a 30% off ticket. I noticed on their own Twitter account that they actually only have 10% off. So that's kind of pretty good. So that's what's happening for me this week in terms of being over in at that event for 2 days. So I think it's going to be a full-on 2 days, really good content, really good brands that are going to be there. And I'm doing a session specifically on the second day on live video, 45 minutes. So looking forward to seeing you there if you're going to be available. And going to be at that conference. So I know I've already got people lined up to nab me for some conversations there, Peter. So I'm sure you're going to be under a lot of pressure to deliver your wonderful course again, because you've already sold out.
I hope so. Look, guys, I really do have to go. I've had a notification for work. I've got to nip out and do some video about a crime that I'm just hearing about here, not too far where I am. So I need to go and film that location, take some video while it's still light, and it's getting a little dodgy, so I've got to get out as soon as I can. But thank you so much for watching again. Thank you for the loan of your eyes and your ears over the last 35, 40 minutes or so on Live Stream Insiders, episode 78. The only program that says we'll tell you about live streaming news from the last 7 days in the next 30 minutes. And next weekend is bank holiday weekend here in the UK and Ireland because of Easter. It is Easter Sunday, so we won't be around unless there is a massive announcement to do with live streaming. We'll be back in 2 weeks. Peter Stewart, Krishna Day, the Live Stream Insiders team.